The Concorde observation flotilla drifted at the outer edge of the morning belt like a row of patient spectators. Their ships kept a respectful distance from the debris field, hulls angled toward the coming engagement. Inside, the atmosphere was calm, too calm for what was about to unfold. Estimated duration? A slender avian diplomat asked, adjusting the translation halo around its throat. 23 minutes, replied a reptilian observer without looking up from the tactical display. The Dominion prefers decisive corrections. A third voice, softer, almost curious. And the humans? A pause. Then a faint dismissive hum. They will learn. Across the void, the human fleet did not look like something that needed learning. It looked uneven. Aboard the UNSF flagship Caliban, Commander Mara Vance stood at the center of a dimly lit bridge, arms folded behind her back. The main display cast shifting patterns of light across her face, asteroid clusters, drifting wreckage, ghost signals flickering in and out of existence. Sensor fidelity? She asked. 42% stable, her operations officer replied. The rest is noise, reflections, or debris scatter. Mara nodded once. Good. That cuts both ways. Around her, the crew worked in quiet coordination. No shouting. No theatrics. Just movement, decisions, adjustments. A fleet built on survival, not ceremony. Dominion fleet translation complete, a voice called. They're forming up. The display shifted. Massive vessels slid into view, clean lines, symmetrical spacing, perfect alignment. Even at this distance, their precision felt deliberate, almost arrogant. They came dressed for a parade, someone muttered. Mara didn't smile. They always do. A signal tone cut through the bridge. Incoming transmission. Dominion origin. Put it through. The image resolved into a towering figure, armored in ceremonial plating, posture rigid with authority. High Strategos Zalcor Vadran did not greet them, he announced himself. Unregistered human fleet. He began, voice smooth and absolute. You have entered contested Dominion space. By authority of the Vatheri High Command, you are ordered to disarm and submit for custodial review. Compliance ensures preservation. Silence followed. The kind meant to force submission. Mara stepped forward slightly. Strategos, she said evenly. This region is recognized as neutral by Concorde Charter. We are operating within our rights. A flicker crossed Zalcor's expression, brief, controlled irritation. Your interpretation is noted. It is incorrect. Then we'll have to disagree. The pause stretched longer this time. Not uncertainty, calculation. You misunderstand, Zalcor continued. This is not a negotiation. This is instruction. Mara tilted her head, studying him like a problem she'd already solved. Then consider this our refusal. She cut the transmission before he could respond. For a moment, the bridge held its breath. Bold, her tactical officer said quietly. No, Mara replied. Clear. She turned back to the display. All ships initiate Phase 1. Controlled withdrawal. Vector into the belt. Acknowledgements flickered across the comms network. Outside, the human fleet began to move. Not as a single unit, but as fragments. Ships adjusted headings at slightly different intervals, speeds varying just enough to break symmetry. From a distance, it looked like hesitation. Even fear. Inside the Concorde observation ships, murmurs spread. They're retreating. Already? Predictable. But the Dominion fleet did not hesitate. Their formation tightened, engines flaring brighter as they advanced. Pursuit confirmed, the operations officer reported. Mara watched the vectors update in real time. Of course they are. Range closing fast. They'll have firing solutions in minutes. Let them, she said. A junior officer hesitated. Ma'am, we're splitting too wide. If they push through the center. They won't, Mara interrupted. They'll maintain formation. It's doctrine. The officer blinked. And if they don't? Mara's gaze didn't leave the display. Then we adapt. Silence settled again, heavier now, but not uncertain. Drone tenders ready, came another voice. Deploy, Mara said. Low emission. Spread pattern Delta. Far beyond the flagship, small shapes detached from larger vessels, drifting outward like seeds carried by invisible currents. No weapons fire. No aggressive maneuvers. Just quiet expansion. Sensor ghosts increasing. Operations noted. Multiple false returns. Mara exhaled slowly. Good. Make the battlefield messy. The first Dominion ships crossed into the outer edge of the morning belt. Their formation held, perfect, unwavering. Still coming straight, the tactical officer said. Of course they are, Mara repeated. She stepped closer to the display, eyes tracking the convergence of two very different philosophies of war. Order and control. Adaptation and uncertainty. Mark this point, she said, tapping a coordinate cluster deep within the debris field. That's where they think this ends. And where does it actually end? Someone asked. Mara's expression didn't change. Somewhere they haven't imagined yet. Outside, the distance closed. The Dominion advanced like a blade. The human fleet scattered like broken glass. Only one of those shapes was what it seemed. The Dominion fleet entered the morning belt without breaking formation. From the outside, it looked flawless, ships aligned with mathematical precision, spacing consistent, speed controlled. Inside that formation, however, the environment was beginning to push back. Sensor returns flickered. Debris drifted across projected paths. Ghost signals pulsed and vanished before confirmation. Interference increasing, a Dominion officer reported. High Strategos Zalcor did not turn. Compensate. We are. The anomalies are inconsistent. They are irrelevant. Ahead of them, the human fleet continued to fracture. Individual ships moved on divergent vectors, some accelerating, others slowing. It resembled panic. Disorder. Zalcor watched it unfold, unimpressed. They lack discipline. Maintain pursuit. Behind him, a weapons officer adjusted targeting grids. Forward batteries locked. We can begin selective engagement. Do so. Remove their outer elements first. Across the void, the first beams fired. On the Caliban, the alert tone cut through the bridge. Contact! Port escort group! The main display flashed as a thin, brilliant line carved across space. One of the outer human ships took the hit. Its hull flared white, then ruptured. A second later, the vessel split along its spine, venting atmosphere and debris into the belt. No one spoke. Mara watched the telemetry update. Life signs collapsing, systems failing, signal gone. Damage control channels open, she said, voice steady. Any survivors, we pull them if we can. Yes, Commander. Another beam lance passed, forcing a nearby frigate to veer hard. They're picking us apart, the tactical officer said. Not yet, Mara replied. They're testing. She shifted her focus to the wider map. Dominion ships continued forward, tightening their engagement envelope. Predictable. Clean. Efficient. Drone deployment status? Active. Spread pattern holding. Good. Increase signal noise. Moments later, the battlefield changed, subtly at first. Sensor readings began to clutter. New contacts appeared where nothing had been seconds before. Echoes overlapped real signatures. On the Dominion flagship, confusion crept into the data. Multiple returns detected. Confirm hostile designations. We can't. Some are fading. Zalcor's gaze sharpened. Illusions. Yes, Strategos. He dismissed it with a flick of his hand. Ignore non-confirmed targets. Focus on verified hulls. Another volley fired. This time, the humans moved differently. Instead of pulling back, several ships triggered controlled detonations among nearby wreck clusters. Old hull fragments, long-dead reactors, and fractured plating erupted into expanding clouds of debris. Not violent enough to destroy, but enough to disrupt. Dominion beams cut through the clouds, but their clarity diminished. Targeting solutions fluctuated. Minor obstruction, an officer reported. No structural threat. Proceed, Zalcor ordered. But the formation adjusted, slightly. On the Caliban, Mara noticed. There, she said quietly. They're correcting. Barely, her operations officer replied. Barely is enough. Another explosion rippled through a distant wreck, this one larger. The debris spread wider, drifting into the Dominion's projected path. They're shaping the field, the tactical officer said. Mara nodded. And they're still calling it irrelevant. A sudden spike lit up the display. Missile signatures, Dominion launch! Mara reacted instantly. Point defense active. Keep moving. Don't give them a fixed solution. The human ships adjusted again, not randomly, but in subtle coordination. Missiles streaked through the cluttered space, some losing lock, others detonating prematurely against debris clouds. Still, a few got through. A cruiser took a hit along its flank, armor buckling under the impact. The ship shuddered but held. Damage report? Superficial. We're still operational. Mara allowed herself a brief exhale. Good. Stay that way. Across the battlefield, the Dominion pressed forward. Their confidence remained intact. Losses were minimal. Their weapons still dominated. They're accelerating, operations reported. Closing distance faster than predicted. Mara studied the incoming vectors. They want this over quickly. Can we stop them? She shook her head. We don't stop them. We guide them. The bridge fell quiet again, but this time the silence carried understanding. Adjust all units, she continued. Pull them deeper. Keep the spacing uneven. Make them commit. Acknowledgements came in, one after another. Outside, the human fleet shifted again, retreating, but not fleeing, drawing the Dominion further into the belt's densest region. On the observation ships, the mood had changed. They're still retreating, one diplomat said, though less certain now. Yes, another replied slowly. But not in the same way. Back in the Dominion flagship, a junior officer hesitated before speaking. Strategos, their movements are coordinated. Zalcor's voice remained cold. Of course they are. Poorly. But the debris patterns. Environmental coincidence. The officer fell silent. Ahead, the battlefield thickened. Larger wrecks drifted into view, their broken structures casting long shadows across the engagement zone. Sensor interference spiked again. They're entering dense field range. Operations warned. Maintain formation, Zalcor said. And they did. Because that was what the Dominion did best. They advanced, perfectly aligned, into a space that no longer rewarded perfection. On the Caliban, Mara leaned slightly closer to the display. Almost there, she murmured. Where? Her tactical officer asked. She didn't look away. The place they can't fight the way they want. Outside, the distance between hunter and prey continued to close. Only now, it was becoming harder to tell which was which. The Dominion advanced for the kill. Their formation tightened as they crossed deeper into the morning belt, beams charging along the length of their forward ships. From their perspective, the pattern was obvious. The humans had nowhere left to go. Behind them lay dense wreckage, drifting metal, and unstable mass clusters. Ahead stood a superior force. Final engagement window approaching, a Dominion officer announced. High Strategos Zalcor watched the tactical display with measured satisfaction. Prepare full firing sequence. We end this now. Across the void, the human fleet did something unexpected. They slowed. On the Caliban, engine output dropped across multiple ships. Emissions reduced. Signatures dimmed until some vessels nearly vanished into the noise. Commander, the operations officer said, uncertain. We're losing visibility. Good, Mara replied. So are they. But we're giving them the initiative. We're taking something better. She stepped closer to the display. All units Phase 2. Go quiet. Stay cold. One by one, confirmations came through. Outside, human ships slipped into the chaos of the belt, their presence blending with debris, wreckage, and shadow. To the Dominion, targets blurred. Clean lines of engagement dissolved. Sensor clarity degrading. A Dominion technician reported. Multiple contacts, unverified. Focus on confirmed hulls, Zalcor ordered. Do not engage ghosts. But the battlefield was no longer offering certainty. Then came the first deviation. A human cruiser fired, not at a ship, but into empty space ahead of the Dominion formation. A railgun slug streaked forward, invisible until it struck a drifting wreck cluster. The impact shattered the mass into a cloud of high-velocity fragments. A second shot followed. Then a third. The void filled with motion. Unstructured debris acceleration detected, the Dominion officer said. Non-targeted discharge. Zalcor frowned slightly. Inefficient. Trajectory paths intersect our advance vectors. Shields will compensate. They did, at first. The first fragments struck like rain against glass, harmless individually. Then the density increased. Thousands of impacts, each transferring energy, heat, stress. Shield output spiked. Heat levels climbed. Thermal load increasing. With intolerance, another officer replied. But the pattern didn't stop. More railgun fire. More shattered debris. The belt itself began to move, not randomly, but with direction. On the Caliban, Mara tracked the developing storm. Keep feeding it, she said. Don't aim for ships. Aim for where they have to be. Her tactical officer nodded. Predictive lanes updating. Good. Make it unavoidable. Across the Dominion formation, the effects multiplied. Radiator Array 3 compromised. Shield fluctuation on port side. Sensor distortion, can't isolate origin points. Maintain formation, Zalcor said, sharper now. Push through. And they did. Because slowing down meant admitting disruption. Breaking formation meant abandoning doctrine. Neither option existed for them. The human fleet adapted again. From the shadows, smaller ships began maneuvering around drifting wreckage, using tractor systems to pull fragments into new positions. Large sheets of metal rotated slowly, forming partial barriers. Not walls, just enough to alter trajectories. They're manipulating debris fields, a Dominion officer said. Zalcor's eyes narrowed. Irrelevant. But his fleet was adjusting more frequently now. Minor course corrections. Slight delays. Each one small. Together, they began to erode precision. Then a new alert cut through the noise. Escort vessel in distress, cooling failure. On the display, one of the Dominion destroyers flickered. Its radiators, shredded by repeated micro-impacts, failed to dissipate heat. Systems began to throttle down. Remove it from line, Zalcor ordered. It's drifting, trajectory unstable. Then leave it. The formation closed ranks, flowing around the failing ship. On the human side, the response was different. Commander, a voice came through comms, strained but steady. Corvette Harlow requesting assist. They're caught in a debris lane. Mara's gaze shifted. The Harlow's position was bad, directly in the path of an expanding kinetic cloud. Nearest support? Frigate Aegis, but they won't make it in time. A brief pause. Then Mara spoke. Redirect Corvette Vega. Tractor lock. Pull them out. Commander, that puts Vega in the impact path. I'm aware. The channel went quiet for half a second. Then, understood. Moving now. On the display, the Vega surged forward, grappling the crippled Harlow. The two ships shifted together, straining against momentum. The debris cloud closed in. Impacts flared across the Vega's hull, first light, then heavier. Armor buckled. Systems flickered. But the Harlow cleared the lane. Release! The pilot shouted. The tractor disengaged. The Vega drifted, burning, but intact. On the Caliban, no one cheered. They simply moved on. Keep formation loose, Mara said. We're not done. Across the battlefield, the Dominion still advanced, but slower now. Less precise. Their lines were no longer perfect. Zalcor studied the data, something unfamiliar creeping into his expression. "These attacks," he said quietly, "they are not directed." "No, strategos," his officer replied. "They are shaping space." For the first time, Zalcor didn't dismiss it. But he didn't stop either. "Continue forward," he ordered. "We are still superior." And for a moment, it almost seemed true. A concentrated beam volley struck a human cruiser, tearing through its defenses. The ship went dark, drifting lifeless among the debris. "Target eliminated," the Dominion officer confirmed. Zalcor straightened slightly. "There. They break." But the battlefield told a different story. The humans hadn't broken. They had changed the rules. And the Dominion was still trying to play the old game. The Dominion formation didn't collapse all at once. It unraveled. At first, it was subtle, ships drifting half a degree off alignment, timing between volleys slipping, heat signatures rising unevenly across the line. Then the pattern deepened. Cooling systems strained. Sensor returns blurred into static. Commands repeated twice before execution. On the Dominion flagship, tension crept into every voice. "Thermal limits approaching across multiple hulls. Radiator loss on 3 vessels, no 5. Target locks degrading. We cannot maintain consistent solutions." High Strategos Zalcor stood rigid, but the certainty that once defined him had thinned. "Stabilize the formation," he said. "We're trying," an officer replied. "The debris density. Irrelevant. Reassert control." But control no longer obeyed. Across the battlefield, the human fleet moved with quiet precision. Their ships stayed cool, engines throttled low, trajectories shallow and deliberate. Around them, the belt had become something else entirely, no longer background, but a shifting weapon. On the Caliban, Mara watched the Dominion status indicators flicker and degrade. "They're overheating," her operations officer said. "Not yet," Mara replied. "They're fighting it." "For how long?" She didn't answer. Instead, she tapped a new command into the console. "All units Phase 3. Begin interference saturation." "Copy." Moments later, the void filled with noise. Drone swarms expanded outward, releasing bursts of chaff, thermal sinks, and signal distortions. Ghost signatures multiplied, overlapping real ones until the battlefield became indistinguishable. On Dominion displays, targets fractured into dozens of false echoes. "We've lost clarity," an officer shouted. "I can't isolate the human flagship." "Filter the noise," Zalcor snapped. "We are, but it keeps shifting." Because the humans were shifting it. On the Caliban, Mara tracked the effect. "Keep it dynamic. Don't let them settle." "They're firing blind now," Tactical reported. "Good. That's where we want them." A Dominion cruiser discharged a full beam volley into empty space. The energy lanced through drifting debris, scattering fragments further, feeding the chaos it tried to clear. Each reaction worsened their position. Zalcor saw it now. Not as a single mistake, but as a pattern. Every adjustment his fleet made tightened the trap. Every correction aligned with something unseen. The humans were not resisting. They were guiding. "They are shaping outcomes," he said, more to himself than his crew. No one answered. Because the realization had already begun to spread. On the human side, the next phase unfolded. "Carrier groups ready," came the call. Mara nodded. "Launch." From the shadows, waves of small craft surged forward, not fighters, but drones. Hundreds of them, cheap, expendable, carrying reflective plating and heat sinks. They flooded the space between fleets, absorbing scans, reflecting signals, distorting targeting further. "They're blinding us," a Dominion officer shouted. "Then push through it," Zalcor ordered. But pushing required direction. And direction was gone. "Rail cruisers stand by," Mara said. "Wait for clean windows." Windows are intermittent. That's enough. The moment came. Now. Human railguns fired in coordinated bursts, not at hulls, but at exposed systems. Radiators. Sensor arrays. Communication spines. Each strike precise, calculated, exploiting the Dominion's degraded awareness. One ship lost external cooling entirely. Another spun slightly off course after its comm array shattered. A third dropped out of formation, unable to maintain synchronization. The line broke. Not violently. Quietly. On the Dominion flagship, silence fell. Zalcor stared at the data, seeing it fully for the first time. They had not been outmatched in strength. They had been outplayed in reality. They are not engaging us, he said slowly. They are controlling us. No one argued. Because it was undeniable. Every move the Dominion made had been predicted, redirected, absorbed. The humans had never needed to overpower them. They only needed to reshape the fight until superiority meant nothing. For the first time, Zalcor felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Then came the final act. Flagship weapon ready, his weapons officer said, voice tight. We can still end this. Zalcor hesitated. Then, with quiet resolve, fire! The primary beam began to charge, energy building along the length of the ship. On the Caliban, the spike registered instantly. They're committing, Tactical warned. Mara didn't flinch. We knew they would. Counter? She gave a single command. Release payload. Far ahead of the human line, a massive object drifted, an old wreck core, dragged into position earlier, unnoticed among the chaos. Now it moved. Accelerated by a precisely timed rail shot, the mass surged directly into the Dominion flagship's path. Collision course! A Dominion officer shouted. Shields up! Too late. The impact didn't pierce. It overwhelmed. Energy surged across the flagship's defenses, heat spiking beyond capacity. Systems failed in cascading sequence. The beam collapsed before firing. The ship drifted, crippled, silent. And with it, the Dominion's certainty shattered. Across the battlefield, engines powered down. Weapons fell quiet. The fight ended not with destruction, but with stillness. On the Caliban, Mara exhaled slowly. Cease fire. No cheers followed. Dispatch rescue teams? She added. Anyone alive, we bring them in. Aye, Commander. Far beyond, the Concord observers watched in silence. One of them finally spoke. They didn't win by force. Another answered, voice low. No. They won by changing what winning meant. In the quiet aftermath, the truth settled across every channel, every record, every witness. The Dominion had come to teach a lesson. Instead, they learned one. They had chosen the wrong fleet.